Treasurer Jim Chalmers unveiled the 2025-26 budget, highlighting a projected $27.6 billion deficit, with deficits anticipated for the next 4 years. The budget prioritising cost of living relief, including a plan to lower income tax rates for the middle income bracket from 15% to 14% by July 2027. Now, while there are no new housing announcements in the budget, investments include $800 million for expanded Help to Buy scheme and also support for prefabricated housing construction. The government will also enhance support for vulnerable Australians amidst the ongoing housing challenges. But what are the ongoing implications for the property industry and also property investments? For more, we're joined in the studio by Terry Ryder, director and founder of hotspotting.com.au and also host of the Property Playbook. Great to have you in the studio, Terry, as always. Let's talk about your initial thoughts on the budget.
Really disappointing. It was very much an election budget. They're basically trying to buy the upcoming election. I think they've missed an opportunity to really, in a structural way, attack some of the core issues that are feeding into inflation. But particularly for the property industry, we've got so many really big issues that haven't been dealt with in any meaningful way. They've been in government for 3 years and they haven't made a dent in the housing shortage, the rental crisis, and in particular the hideously high cost of building new dwellings in this country, which is the biggest problem of all. We
see the Treasurer unveiling the budget, of course. What were your thoughts as he was unveiling it, as you were watching this?
I thought that it was a bit of a hoax, as I think the opposition has described the tax cut. It's a meaningless amount, and it's not going to happen until the middle of next year. But I thought quite sad that the great opportunity had been missed to deal with the really big issues that are facing the property industry. We've got record worse unaffordability, we've got record low rental affordability, and we've got the highest cost of building house and land packages and apartments in the history of this nation. None of those issues have been dealt with in any way, so the problems are going to persist.
You and I have been covering these topics for quite a while. The thing that I've noticed over the last 15 years, I'd be keen to see if you agree, is that once upon a time Labor raised taxes and the Liberals cut spending, but they both then found that they would get turfed out of government very quickly if they did that. So to grow the budget, the economy, they turned to immigration, which was something that has happened pretty much over the past 15 years. It's happening in all Western countries as well. Is that the reason, the primary concern you have when it comes to housing affordability at the moment?
It's not the primary reason, no. It's part of a problem. Obviously, record levels of people coming into Australia as migrants is feeding into demand for real estate, and that's making a bad problem worse, but it's not. It didn't cause the problem. I know some people are scapegoating foreign investors and migrants and foreign students for all the problems that beset property, but they're not the fundamental causes. It's been years and years of bad policy at federal and state government levels in particular, deterring people from becoming investors to the degree that fewer and fewer people want to do it, which is why we have the rental shortage. We've got to start actually incentivising people to be landlords. We've been doing the opposite for the last 5 or 6 years.
When we talk about federal responsibility versus state responsibility for housing, who do you think has the biggest punch?
Look, I think the federal government does. I mean, they will say that housing is a state government responsibility, but the federal government has a great opportunity to show leadership, to facilitate a national approach to solving these problems. One of the biggest problems is that it is so incredibly expensive to build new dwellings in this country. House and land package is almost $1 million.
And a lot of developers are saying about Victoria, get out, it's completely unaffordable at the moment.
That's right. Well, a lot of developers have approvals, but they're not building because it's not financially viable. It doesn't stack up because the price they would have to charge for the end product is too high and the market won't pay it. But the problem is that between 40 and 50% of that incredibly high cost of a house and land package is actually government taxes, fees and charges. That's what the federal government could facilitate.
And they keep going up.
They keep going up. Every time a federal or state government makes a decision that impacts on the housing crisis, they make it worse, not better.
When you have a look at these figures on the screen at the moment, so a $5 weekly tax cut that will cost $17 billion, what are your thoughts?
It's an election bribe that's going to have no meaningful impact in anybody's lives. It's just going to put the budget into much bigger deficit. $5 a week. You know, we're talking about families with mortgages that have had 13 interest rate increases and one small decrease. They're paying hundreds of dollars a week more on their mortgages. $5 a week in a tax cut is meaningless. Some people would say, well, every little bit helps, but I don't think so. What we really need is meaningful structural reform and the elements creating high cost of living, in particular high cost of housing.
Terry, it's obviously an election a budget just before an election, and usually treasurers don't hand down 4 budgets, they hand down 3. This is the budget that no one expected or wanted, but it was the cyclone that brought it on.
Sure.
What do you want to see in the election campaign that you didn't see in the budget?
I'd like to see somebody in politics showing that they actually have an understanding of the issues, because I don't think very many politicians in Australia really understand how we got to this point in history.
On both sides?
On both sides of politics, and particularly not the Greens. You know, we've got to this point in history for specific reasons. We're building towards it over the last 5, 6 or more years through bad government policy. The politicians need to understand that they've caused this housing crisis, and it's up to them to fix it. Having understood how we got here, then maybe they can start to devise solutions for remedies, but they have to start talking to the right people. They're not talking to investors. They never get a seat at the table when we have a talk fest about these issues. It's the usual suspects like the big end of town, the Property Council, and then the other end of town, Social Security. But the people in the middle, the investors who provide over 90% of the homes that people rent in this country, they never get a seat at the table. That has to change.
Terry Ryder, hotspotting.com.au, and also the host of the Property Playbook right here on Ticker. Appreciate your time as always.
You're welcome.